Alright, welcome to the Golden Strawberry tutorial for 6B. One of the hardest stages in the game. Here I'll just talk about like the strategies I used to get through a lot of these stages, and just kind of the pitfalls of a lot of the rooms in here, as well as discuss other options you might take, and just kind of just give advice that I think could be helpful. When you first start doing this one, it might seem impossible, but with enough practice, you can definitely do it. You just have to be pretty dedicated, honestly. Like it took me a good week of practice to really get started, and then like another couple of days to actually get it. So here it's not too bad. The only detail here is so you can either bash it when you're far enough to the left, where you can just stand here and then jump off and dash at it, or you just do it whenever and then you jump off and then hit it. You're gonna be grabbing it, and then you're gonna be dashing the block and then grabbing it. The hop to get back on top of it, you don't want to hold X, you just want to tap X, because if not, you'll actually go right over the block and you'll miss it. I'll try to show that actually. It looks like a mistake that happens sometimes. Yeah, if you hold X too long, that's what happens. Or whatever, the jump button too long. So make sure that you just tap it. Then the rest of it is pretty simple. Make sure you crouch there. Okay. This room was a lot of trouble for me, just because I'm not that great at feathers. I play on console, so I'll just mention when I use the D-pad or when I use the analog stick, but use whatever control scheme works for you. I just prefer to use the D-pad on the first and third feather, just because the paths that you have to take are pretty straight, so I prefer to use the D-pad. For the second feather, I prefer to use the analog stick, just because that direction is hard to do with the D-pad. So here, just dash to the second feather. Okay, so kind of a detail here. If I stay near the center of this tunnel and dash to the feather, and I just dash up after that, I'll be below the spikes. But if I go a little bit closer to the feather and then dash to it, now I'm a bit further left and I can just point up. That's what I prefer to do, just because I prefer to have an easier kind of time on the third feather. But it does make the second feather a little bit harder, because you do have to turn into the little narrow pathway before the third feather. But I don't know, I just found this strategy more reliable. But do whatever works for you. And this is no problem. So I'll just show that one more time. For the second feather, you just get used to like for keyboard, I can't really talk, but for if you're using like a D-pad, or I mean an analog stick, eventually your muscle memory just kicks in and you just kind of point in like that perfect direction. You just have to practice it. Alright, the third room is another really hard one. I know a lot of people have trouble with this one, and I can't say that I can make it super consistent, because I still died here for sure. But eventually I got through this room most of the time in my runs. So when it comes to talking about bumpers, I'll often have to mention like landing on specific spots on the bumper. So I decided I'll use a system like a clock system. So like the top of the bumper would be like 12 o'clock. This would be like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. The right side would be 3 o'clock, just so I can like talk about like, you know, jump at 10 or 11 o'clock to get bounce in the right spot. So I hope that system works for you guys. But yeah, for this first bumper, you can either skip it entirely with a wave dash, and then a diagonal dash from there. With here, diagonal dash, and land on the top of the bumper. You can just do it the regular way, jump on like 10 to 11 o'clock on the bumper, and dash onto it. What I did, and I don't know if this is the best method, but it's what I got used to. You can jump over it, dash onto the 9 o'clock of the first bumper, and okay, oh, I missed it that time because I paused, and just dash up right after you get past the spike wall, like right before you hit the bumper, essentially. Which I guess seems a little bit hard, but sometimes that happens too if you don't press it in time. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's a method I got used to, but perhaps it's easier to use the wave dash method. Alright, yeah. Yeah, I do think it's actually easier. So if you're good at wave dashing, let's do it like this. Oh. Yeah, so once you're at the second bumper, this part is also pretty hard, because the like the gap is just off to the right, so you can't just hit the middle of the bumper and dash up. So there's kind of two approaches. The inferior one, in my opinion, is to kind of try and hit the perfect spot on the bumper. Would be like right, oh, it's a bit too far to the right. Right here. What I prefer to do is just hit the top of the bumper, so 12 o'clock on the bumper, and just move a little bit to the right in the air before dashing up and then moving left. If I didn't pause, I would have got it. Like that. Okay. The third feathers, I don't think it's that much of an issue. It wasn't for me. The feather here is kind of tough too. You don't have to stick that close to the spikes to make it to the right corner in time. So you can kind of take a more liberal path through the area. You can go down to here, you know, you're still fine. Let me just do it. Like that. And yeah, it's pretty tough, but eventually you get used to it. Sometimes I need to take multiple bounces here. Yeah. Alright, finally out of the three first terrible rooms. So when I was around the time that I got the golden, I was drawing there maybe 25% of the time. When I first started practicing this golden, probably 75% of my deaths were in these three first rooms. So they get better, but they're still really annoying. So this room is a little bit easier. Just want to dash down, jump right before you hit the spikes. Make sure you don't hit both spike walls adjacent to me right now. And then there's two approaches. You can either dash the Kevin block, then you have to do this whole kind of procedure to get the coin, which is kind of hard. Like, the feather is not the hardest one, but I still died here some of the time. Another way to do it is to grab onto the Kevin block, which I guess is a little bit harder than bashing it, but then you can just get the feather right away. Just make sure that you're near the middle of the block so that you don't jump too high and hit the spike to the right of me. Like that. So just use whatever method works for you. Alright, rune number 5. A lot of my deaths were here. Like it's the third bumper really, the third and the fourth bumper here are really some of the worst. Specifically because you can't dash to it. So what I prefer to do here is I want to get really far. I want to get as left as I can on the bumper. So like hopefully near like at least 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock on the bumper. If I go on the right side of the bumper, I'll just be shot too fast, and most of the time I'll just get on the spike wall, which I guess I'll demonstrate that. So if you go, okay, so that was actually pretty good. Let me just show what happens if you go a little bit too, like yeah, that was actually still decent, but generally you want to go pretty far to the left so that you're not going too fast to the right and you have time to dash up. Anyways, that's what I prefer to do. Yeah, so that's what happens if you go, if you're too far to the right. Oof. But yeah, that's actually one of the harder parts of the level. Okay, once you're here, I like to position myself in a very specific spot, just because I like to be consistent with the jump and like know what what kind of trajectory I'll get. And this is a spot I like. If you notice, like there's kind of like a triangle that forms in the pixels between the top of Madeline's hair and the pixels, and that's kind of like how I know I'm at the right spot. But really, other spots work. It's just I prefer to have like a consistent place I jump from. Okay, here there's kind of like a bush behind me, and that's kind of what I use to track when I wanted to press left. What I would do is when my head was past the bush, I would just tap left a little bit. Not too much, because then you'll go too far left on the bumper and hit the spikes in the middle. Yeah, like that. But another place where you'll die a lot. So let me just show this whole thing once again. Oh, so that's a bit too far left. And for sure I still die here. Whatever. Alright. Alright, room 6. This one's a little bit easier. At least to me. So for the second bumper, I like to make sure I get to it when it's right there, in that position. So to make sure I make it when it's at that point, what I do is I enter the room, I immediately go right, immediately jump and dash to this kind of like stalactite or something. And I just wait for maybe half a second. Then I go on the top of it, get bounced on it, and then dash on 3 o'clock. Do a diagonal dash onto this platform, jump and dash up. And now, by the time I get there, it's exactly in the middle. So I don't know, that's a bit complicated when said like that, but this is what it looks like. And sometimes you'll get there at slightly different times, but generally, as long as it's under, like in that position, you're okay. Okay, for this one, I like to bounce on it 3 times. Aim for the middle, and then for the third bounce, you can still be in the middle, but I like to go for like 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, so I get bounced here. I prefer generally to get bounced more. Oh, okay. Let me just do this again. I prefer to get more control bounce that doesn't go like veering to the right, because sometimes they'll get too low and just hit the spikes below me. So just make sure you stay in control, and you just go like that. Okay, then just go to the bottom or near the bottom. Really, actually doesn't matter really. Then you want to jump at a specific time. I jump when it's stopped at the bottom, so I'm like now. That was actually a little bit late, but you get the idea. Then you just want to jump and dash left on the bumper. When I was first doing this stage, I was often bouncing too high off the bumper, so make sure you go a bit earlier than you might expect at first. Then this part, yeah, it's not too bad. Alright, room 7. The last room of checkpoint 1, thankfully. So, yeah, just make sure you get to the top of this Kevin block before it hits the wall. Jump, wait for a second, then just do kind of like a circle here. Hit the Kevin block, make sure you get to the very top, and jump off, do a wall jump, and just hit the bumper with a left dash. Then hit the bumper. Same thing here. At the very top. And it can seem a bit scary to hit that last bumper, but you have a lot of time really. Okay, checkpoint 2. Alright. Okay, these rooms are a lot easier, so I won't have much to say. This room really is pretty trivial. Same thing for this one. Although you should still stay focused on these rooms, you never know. Okay, this room is a little bit harder. So normally I think the game wants you to hit the side of it like that. You can do it in another way where you use a extended super dash or a hyper dash, but you can just do a super dash. And then just use that extra dash to dash on the left side of the bumper at 9 o'clock. Like that. So you kind of see I tend to use the background here to make sure I'm in the right position. So you kind of notice, okay, right above me, there's kind of like a notch on the vegetation. Like I'll try to actually get in that position. Right here, like right behind where Madeline is. Yeah, so that's where I like to position myself. And once I'm at that position, I just hold right. And yeah, that time I got pretty far to the right, but that's still a good enough bounce to make it through. But that's generally the background reference I use to make sure I'm in a good position. I don't know, I like using the background to help situate myself. This room's a little bit harder as well. Specifically because of this spot right here. Not that spot. Dodging this spike right here. Sometimes I died there. I don't know. But it shouldn't be too bad overall. Okay, here, just... Make sure you don't get any momentum from that Kevin block. So just wait a second before jumping. This one's not too bad. Make sure you jump from low enough, but not too low. Alright, this room, you have the feather. And make sure you don't go too low in this particular path, so you can turn better there. Then they offer you this wall to your right, but it's better to just go down from here and just dash left. Alright, now this is by far the hardest room in checkpoint 2. So that part is kind of hard because that gap above me is pretty hard to fit through. But the part that's really bad is here, coming up. Essentially, it's these three... Oh, okay. Oh, God. The three areas at the end where you have to fall through, like, those tunnels, and then you have these two gaps you have to kind of fall into, if you know what I mean. So here's how I did it. So to get into the first tunnel, I would try to dash from an exact position. And I'm actually a little bit... So actually, I was actually pretty good. So you can see my silhouette kind of behind Madeline. The third silhouette behind me is actually in a pretty much the exact position I like to dash from. So like in between those two spike balls, below the like remnant of the third remnant behind me of Madeline. So hopefully I get a good... Yeah, so that's actually pretty perfect. I prefer to be on the left side of this tunnel when I'm falling. And yes, it's that precise, unfortunately. I mean, you can make it if you're on like more to the right, but it's a bit harder. So when I get past this narrow area, I'm going to have to dash left. And depending on where I am, I'm going to hold the left input for a varying amount of time. So since I'm at the leftmost side of the tunnel, I'm just going to tap left for an instant so I can dash left. But if you're more to the right, you're going to want to hold left for a little bit longer. You can do it by eye, of course, but I mean, you have better eyes than me if you can do it like that. I prefer to just kind of get into like a consistent position and hold the analog stick or the D-pad for like a memorized amount of time, whatever. So yeah, in this case I'm just gonna tap it for a second, see how I made it through the first tunnel, and yeah, kind of rambled off a bit there, sorry about that. But I'll just try and show this room one more time. But yeah, this is one to practice a lot. I think the first time I did this room, when I did 6B, I died like 200 times in this one room. So yeah. Alright, last room before battling. Thankfully this one's not too bad. Just make sure that you go close to the crystal when you dash onto it. I just find that it makes the rest of it a bit easier. Oh, unless you do that. Let's go a little bit up. Alright, we made it. Alright, the 10 battling rooms. So, these ones are pretty hard. Get good at these before you start doing the gum strawberries. Get it deathless a couple times. These 10 rooms, I mean. And once you're comfortable with it, then start doing the actual golden berry attempts. This first room's not too bad. One jump off here. Dash up here, move right. You can, I've seen people do this strategy, or something like that. I prefer just wait a bit longer on here, jump off. If he usually shoots above me, then immediately jump off of this, and if you hold right, you should get onto the falling stone. But they're actually, because I paused, I did it a bit late, but generally it should look like this. Oh, okay, not like that. Like that. Okay. Alright, another pretty easy room. When you first enter this room, she'll be shooting at you, so just... I like to dodge by going to this stone, then falling on her, but you can do whatever you want. Diagonal dash back onto it, diagonal dash to her. Then here, you can either dash onto the fallen pillar and jump off of it, or you can get battle in, and once you get her, hold right and start tapping the dash button, and you should dash before the stone crushes you, I guess. This tunnel's not too bad, just practice it a bit. Alright, the third room. This one's also not too bad, a little bit harder. I like to dodge her attack once, then just do this part, which is not too bad. Left a bit here to get to the platform, then hold right. Do 2 diagonal dashes here and just fall onto the crystal. Diagonal dash, right dash. That's what I like to do there. This feather is not too hard. Next room is the first pretty hard battling room. Okay, so first I like to go up here. Sometimes you won't have enough time there, so just use the diagonal dash there to get the coin if you need to. Get to the coin. There I think I waited a bit, that's why I almost got shot by the bullet. Merely do a wall jump off of it. Go below. There I always like to do a diagonal dash. So that I can make sure I have enough distance for the coin. And I can just fall into battle in, get the feather, up, down, dash onto her. Make sure you don't go through a section too fast, because sometimes you can get shot by her if you do that. So I like to just stall a little bit when I'm dashing into the crystals. But yeah, that's like a little nuance. Alright, so this is another pretty tricky battling room. When you're entering the room for the first time, she'll start shooting at you right away. So make sure you immediately just walk off, and you'll make it through the gap. Then once you get to this wall, immediately start going down, and quickly jump, and kind of aim for maybe like 1 or 2 o'clock on the bouncer. So like the top right corner. Yeah, and for that part I just did there, I tend to like to do it like this. But really do it however you like. Okay, here, one of the big risks is going too high and hitting the spike near the top of the wall to the left of me. So make sure you go a bit lower. I like to dodge the laser and the bullet, and then go for a hyper dash on the crumbly block. If you don't want to do that, then just use the regular method of going on the bouncer. But I prefer to avoid using bouncers just because they're a bit tricky. Okay, I'm gonna do it one more time. Go at the right time. Okay, that was a little bit iffy, but you get the idea. Okay, so for this room, I prefer to actually get onto the bouncer and get to the wall to the left by just dashing onto the bouncer and using the bounce to go left. Oh, not like that. Like this. You can get there just by jumping off the edge here, or by doing a super from there. Or that's actually a bad super. Yeah, like that. And the rest, just practice it. Make sure not to go too high on this Kevin block at this point, because if not, you can go over the next gem right here. And here, just tap up. Here, I like to immediately dash diagonally to this platform, and then dodge the first laser. Alright, for this part, you can do it however you like. But once I dodge the laser here, or not dodge the laser. So once I would dodge the laser, I prefer to dash twice on the ground just so that I go at a specific time that I find works for the platforming. I'll just dodge by dashing up, and then she should shoot below me once I'm going up here. But really just do it however it works for you. Here, go to the bottom, wait until your momentum's gone, then dash straight to the bouncer. What I do here, and I don't know if this is really a good recommendation to give to people, but I like to just dash down into the bouncer. I don't know why, but I just found it to work well for me. Like that. Either way, I like to dash diagonally in the air to like make her shoot her laser above and fall back onto the column here. Just hold on to it, wait until the momentum leaves, and just drop onto her. Her hitbox is pretty big, so you should get her pretty easily. Alright, so this room starts with you having to do this kind of maneuver. But to get consistent at it, I tried, this first one's not too bad. For this next one though, it's a bit harder. So what I did is I tried staring at the spikes below me, just so I can know exactly where I am and when I should do my diagonal dash. The spot I found worked most consistently is, oh, I'm actually a bit too far to the right here, but right above that kind of depression in the spikes below me, that's when I found it to be a good spot to dash from. So I'm actually a bit too far to the right here, so I still made it. But yeah. Maybe a little tiny bit off from the center to the right, but yeah, it's roughly where you want to dash from. This feather is a little bit scary, especially this far into the run. I like to just dash into this wall and get to this point right here. Jump into the bouncer. Get to this point. Make sure you do it fast, because if not, she'll shoot you. But that's the path that I found works best for me. But in general, this part is not too bad. Okay, for this room, when you're first entering it, she'll start shooting at you right away. So immediately get to the spot or dodge, or just do whatever you want. You know, you can dodge by actually going to that spot. I can actually pull this off. But I prefer to just immediately go down here and dodge by dashing. But whatever works for you. After you do that, you can go about this section in a couple of ways. You can go up here, but I prefer to go straight for the second set of blocks, like this. So just dodge when you're right below the first set of blocks. Sometimes if you dash a bit too early, you'll grab onto the blocks. So make sure you hold grab just in case you do dash too early, and then you can kind of save yourself I didn't that time, but yeah, like that. But generally you want to try to just go directly for the second set of blocks. That part I can do it like that, it's not too bad. Here I waited a little bit so she can shoot. Okay, this next part is the hardest part of this room. You can do it in a lot of ways. I prefer to avoid the bumper in the center. The way I do that is by immediately going down the wall when I get to it. And as she's shooting, I won't jump, I'll just dash left. And that should position me above the bumper, the first bumper. From there, I'll try to get straight to the third bumper. Like that. That's how I do it. If your timing is different than that, she might shoot you. So make sure that you go by dashing to the first bumper. Because if you jump to it, it's a little bit slower. So you might end up getting shot by the laser. And that part's never really trouble. Alright, my nemesis. Probably the worst room in 6B. Unfortunately, it's right at the end. So when you're first entering this room, immediately start running. Okay, I messed that up that time. Well, I almost did, but try and make sure you don't go as curvy as that. Okay, yeah, generally you shouldn't get shot by a laser, but in some cases, if you're too slow, you can get shot there. Okay, I like to try to get to this structure. If you don't, just go immediately for the bumpers and you should be alright. I like to let her shoot and then wait just a little bit. And that should give me a better timing for the next laser. Okay, and that's how you do it. I die a lot at this very last bumper. Because I didn't get a good bounce from the one below me right now. So the spot you want to aim for is kind of like the, I guess, if it was a clock, it would be like 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock. No. Like that. That's how you want to do it. So just make sure you memorize that spot when you do it and kind of stare at it as you're doing the final dash. Although you're really nervous, so I'm sure it's not that easy. Once you're here, luckily it's not too bad. Okay, so for this room, the first kind of situation you run into is this kind of block you have to go through and land right as it appears. I've tried doing this in two ways. One way kind of involves going pretty early and just really going. When I do this method, I try to jump. It's a bit too late, but I try to jump right as it's about to appear and just go for it. Otherwise, what you can do is you can land on it. Oh. Jump as it's disappearing, then land on it, immediately go back, and now you'll be at a good timing to get there. This one seems a little bit more like long-winded, but in a way it's a little bit easier because the timing in the beginning I find is a little bit easier, but whatever you prefer. Get to the right of it, dash up, Bounce on it once. And then just dash left. And try to go for a diagonal here. Alright.